And let's talk some Alouettes and CIS here with the finely dressed Mo Khan. Nothing but the greatest hoodie on. Mo, Alouettes get a big victory. You know, people are griping about how it was close, but in a meaningless game, a win is a win. That's still pretty impressive to me, I think.
A win is a win indeed, especially given that the Edmonton Eskimos are fighting for their playoff lives right now in hopes of making the crossover into the East Division playoffs here. But you look at it from a standpoint that for the Alouettes to, when push came to shove, when Edmonton mounted a comeback and brought it down to 2 points with one more play left on the failed 2-point convert. It shows a lot of charisma, character for this football team to come up with the W. Now, moving ahead, this being the last game of the year, their last real tune-up before the playoffs, in which Anthony Covey will not be playing this weekend, which is a smart move, obviously speaking here. You hope that Adrian McPherson could continue on with his ascension of maybe becoming the future quarterback of the Alouettes. And you look at it from a perspective that this team right now is banged up going into this football game. Ideally, and it's so tough to predict or forecast what's going to happen in football games, but if Mark Trestman can come out of this game unscathed, this is a victory regardless if they win or not on Saturday. So for them right now, the whole goal is to make sure that no one suffers any serious long-term injuries that could affect the roster come East Final in 2-3 weeks' time.
Game points here, talking some CFL, Montreal Alouettes. The rest of that race, Mo, we'll get back to the Owls in a minute,
yes.
But Hamilton Tiger Cats still alive. They need to win. They need some help. Saskatchewan have they clinched? They're just jockeying?
Saskatchewan's in.
Okay, so it's between Edmonton and Hamilton for the final spot. If you're a CFL viewer, watcher, who would you rather see in there competition-wise? Who's a better team, do you think, overall, Edmonton or Hamilton?
I think Hamilton's probably the better, well-rounded team, but in terms of who would be more of a threat in the playoffs, Edmonton could definitely pose as a threat, but I think Hamilton would be a tougher out for the Alouettes if they were to play them in the playoffs, and that's why if you're Toronto, and by the way, Toronto plays Hamilton on Thursday, the last game of the year. If Toronto beats Hamilton, then essentially it sets up for the Eskimos to win the last spot outright. But if Hamilton wins that football game, then really they have to come out there and beat the Stampeders, Edmonton, that is, in their last game of the year on Friday Night Football. So for them right now, both teams have a lot to play. And for Hamilton, the key for them is to continue on with their offense. That is their bread and butter of this football team. They won't win games with their defense, but if Hank Burris could still throw TDs like he has this season and accumulate yards, it could bode well for them moving ahead into the last week of the season.
Talking some CFL here with Mr. Mo Khan. Back to the Alouettes now, Mo. They have one game left against Winnipeg. What is the game plan coming in? Do they just play some scrubs? Who plays? Who doesn't play? How do they approach it?
It's a good question because, how do you prepare for a team that's not in the playoffs? How do you prepare for a game which really has no bearing on the outcome of the overall standings? And for the Alouettes, I believe what they're going to do is simple installation of plays for the offense and defense, look over game film of Winnipeg, because really for them right now, there really isn't a team you can focus in on because Toronto has to play the winner of whoever will be the third place team for that game to determine who Montreal will play in 3 weeks' time here. But for the Alouettes right now moving ahead here, it's a matter of this keeping in rhythm, making sure guys know their assignments on both sides of the football, and tightening up all three phases of the football game, especially special teams, because we've seen in years past where special teams on a missed field goal return, a punt return, a fake punt, a blocked field goal, has resulted in momentum shifts for teams in football games that has led them to victory. So really for the Alouettes, it's to make sure you put down the hatchet and make sure all three phases are in sync going into November.
All right, and who is ultimately the better matchup, do you think, for the Owls in that division final? So you got Toronto, could be Edmonton, could be Hamilton. Who are you hoping for if you're an Alouettes player, coach, etc.?
I think it's Toronto because right now you look at Toronto, they're banged up. Ricky Ray is not going to play this weekend, so you wonder how healthy he'll be going into the East semifinal next week. And for him moving ahead, if he is not healthy, that definitely does not help Toronto's chances. So really for Toronto, I think that's the better matchup against the Alouettes. Whereas with Hamilton, they match up really well with the Owls offensively speaking here. They can go TD for TD here. With Edmonton, kind of Jekyll and Hyde with them, very unpredictable, very polarizing. You don't know which Eskimo team will show up on the football field. So really for them, I think the ideal matchup would be Toronto moving ahead.
And then finally, Mo, tell us what's happening in the CIS.
We are now in playoffs, so it's CIS football. Of course, the road to the CIS Vanity Cup begins now, which will be held in Toronto the Friday before the Grey Cup weekend. In fact, TSN Radio will be the proud host of the Dunsmore Cup, which will be next Saturday with Elliot Price and I. Site to be determined because Laval, which is the number 1 seed in the Quebec playoffs, could very well host it. They play McGill this Saturday. On the flip side of things, Montreal plays Sherbrooke. The winner of those two games, will meet at the higher seed home field. So really, for this football game, the likely scenario could be Laval versus the winner of Sherbrooke versus Montreal. So we'll see how that plays out this weekend moving ahead.
All right, well, there you go. Little CIS, little CFL football. Plenty more football talk later in the show. We'll talk some NFL with Jeff Erickson for Fantasy Football Angle. We'll also get our NFL picks for Week 9. Wow, Week 9 already. On the other side, though, we'll talk some NBA with our buddy Dwight Walton and the Tweet 10 list with Mike O'Brien.